Hi, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at effects pedal boards. We're going to be looking at how to make them, giving you some top tips on what to look at when you're buying, what pedals to buy, what kind of pedals to look at, how to route, what kind of signal chains to look at, and we'll make it very simple for you. We're going to look at a few different rigs and a few different ideas that might suit your needs, and how to actually research this stuff as well, because you might find it useful. It might be your first time of using pedals, and it might actually be that you're quite seasoned, you do it very regular, but there might be some little tips that you might pick up along the way. So the first couple of considerations that you might need to make are around what size board do you want to be taking out. So this board here, this is one that I've used for a couple of years. It's a little bit of a veteran. It's made by a company called Dunlop, who are a cheap and cheerful brand. Comes with a little case. I think I bought this board used for about £10. You also need to think about the size of the pedal board that you're going to need, and in terms of how many pedals you're intending to use. What kind of setup is it going to be? Is it going to be ampless? Because you may need a bigger board. Other considerations that are really important is where you're going to put your power bank. Is it going to go underneath the board or on top of the board? If it's a really small power bank required, you can get away with a smaller board. However, in my experience, if you have lots of pedals, you'll need to have a big power bank with lots of juice on tap. If you have a power supply that requires a lot of ampage, you need a more powerful isolated unit, and that's going to mean that your board will need to have somewhere to put that. My recommendation would be to have something where you can put that power supply underneath the board. I also think you may want to look at layered boards. Now, if you do want a layered board, you will need to start thinking about how you're going to control your pedals from that point. Sometimes you'll need to have a set of loop switches, which can add complexity to the situation and cost. I found that if you want to be cost effective but also be able to reach your pedals, if you've got big feet, you'll need an angled board. So the lowest point of the board will be at the front where your feet are, and then the board will angle upwards. That will really save you a lot of tap dancing. What have I done to the board first? Well, actually, under here, I've put in a small power supply. This power supply will run from a USB input, but it will also run from a power bank, which is really useful. As you can understand, you don't get ground problems with those. This is very cheap and cheerful, by the way. On a larger setup, I would always recommend getting a good power distributor. Note when you make something like this, the milliamps. So most of the pedals that I've got are going to be they're going to be under 100 milliamps, but some of them will need more power, more juice. These are the ones that are going to be 300 milliamps. So you have to be aware of that when you're choosing your board. I've just stuck this on with Velcro underneath here. I've put this strip here because I don't quite trust it. But I have done quite a few big gigs with this. I've just took it on a cruise. I just thought I would show you kind of and undo some of these things just to show you the starting point. So I'll obviously be clipping these off and redoing these tidy. This side of it is just one side of the Velcro. It's double-sided Velcro. You can get it from anywhere, Hobbycraft, you name it. Those kind of places. You're going to need to know what kind of pedals you want to use. So I'm just going to start with the tuner. You always want your tuner right at the front because it will give you a really pure guitar signal. And most pedal boards run from left to right. So right to left. So input comes in on the right and all your pedals stack that way. It doesn't actually matter as long as you get the order of signal path right. But I guess I'm trying to be economic in terms of how I organise that stuff. So there we go. Let's now move on to the pedals that I like to use. So this is a compressor. So I would use a compressor first. quite a big compressor this is, but it's kind of 2-in-1. And what's really important with your pedals is how are the leads mounted. So some pedals, like this one, this electro-harmonics, I love electro-harmonic stuff, but they've got side mounted inputs and outputs, and the power is at the front. I find that slightly less friendly in comparison to a pedal that has the jacks mounted on the very front, like this one. This is more of the modern way of doing things. There's got 2 jacks on the front and an input there. Couple of things that I like to use. This is a great pedal. This is a 2-in-1 pedal, but it doesn't look it. But what you've got here is you've got a chorus effect. If you turn the delay off and the feedback down, and then you can add a bit of depth and blend that signal in, and you've got a chorus, or you can turn your delay up, your feedback up, and your depth off for a straightforward analog delay. And this is a great sounding pedal. It makes your signal sound really nice. So I recommend one of these. You can also adjust the speed and the waveform, and it also has an expression pedal where you can change the chorus speed or the vibrato speed. So that's pretty multifunctional. Good value pedal, that is. So we're going to look at pedal shapes. So I'm going to show you this. This is a small pedal. This is actually a Klon Centaur clone. It's fantastic because of its size. It's a very small pedal. You can't run it off a battery. You have to run it over a 9-volt adapter. The adapter here comes in on the side, which actually is quite good if you're going to end mount it. You could even side mount it. Ins and outs are staggered, which again solves that problem. If all your pedals, kind of like your Boss pedals or your EHX pedals, are all kind of in the same position. So something like that is really cool. So you can get them like that, or the standard kind of mini pedal is like this. So power at the front, generally speaking, you get a staggered input and output, which is great for putting onto a board. So they're the kind of shapes. You've also got the ones where they front mount. So this pedal here is front mounted, inputs, outputs, power there. That's a really good one to use if you want to use some kind of you want economy on your board. So let's have a look at how we're going to build our signal chain. So when you do a pedal design, you want to think about the kinds of pedals you want to use and how you're going to structure them, because you have to manage your gain structure. You might want to put an amplifier in there, and you might want to also put in some modulation effects. So I'm going to show you the whole way you can do that. Generally speaking, we will start with the tuner. This one's really straightforward. I might put that at the beginning of the chain like this, and then I'll have my compressor after that. And you'll notice on here there's just a little bit of room for me to put my power in. And then what I would probably want from there is I like a wah-wah pedal. So I'm not a fan of small wah-wah pedals. The mini ones just don't really work as a wah for me. So I'd lay that out like this. This is just hypothetical, putting it down, getting an idea of how things are going to fit onto the board. I would then want an EQ, and that would EQ my guitar signal. So something like that would do nicely. I can have a little bit of overhang. It fits really well in the bag. So that's absolutely fine like that. After this point, I'd start thinking about, so I've got my this compresses the signal, this shapes the sound, so that might shape the input tone, this will shape the actual guitar timbre. So at the moment I use a lot of Les Pauls, and I can make it sound a bit more like a single coil guitar by EQing it this way, and I can have it so it boosts a tiny bit so it doesn't lose its oomph. The next step would be my gain pedals. So I need to think about what gain pedals I'm going to use. My current favourite gain pedal is the Protein. So you could put a Protein, but if I put that here, I'm going to have a problem with my cables unless I'm very careful how I mount it. So I might have to mount it back a little bit and use some thin cables. So you've got to think about that, but I can afford to butt it up against this pedal here, and that'll be absolutely fab. I might want a different kind of drive. Let's have a think. I'm going to think about that in a minute. Next step will be in my rig, you might want to put an amp. You might be going into an amp, so we can talk about different ways of doing that. But I like using this. This is called a Woodrow. A Woodrow is a universal audio Fender tweed amp, and it does a great clean sound. I can load a preset in there. I can have a dirty sound coming out of it. I can really drive it. And what I can do is I can use a boost as well. So this is assigned to set up. So I've got an EP boost, which is one of my favourite boost sounds. So you could do that. And then I can add my memory boy afterwards, which would have my delay, my chorus, which is actually in the studio what you would normally do. Okay. And then following that, you might have another. I've got a Trellic Opta, which is an optical trem effect. I could put that up here if I wanted, or I could put some other, like a reverb if I wanted one. This actually has like a room sound, which does a good reverb kind of emulation. So you could do that if you wanted to. And this, it's best to try this stuff before you kind of root it all out. You could have your Woodrow and have this pre-Woodrow. I've done that. That was absolutely fine. And on the gig that I've just done, I had something like this. This was basically how I'd set it up. So I had compression, a wah. Compression's always on. It's quite blended. So the way this works is you've got a dry signal blended in with it, so it sounds and feels like your guitar should. Goes into there. I could use the EQ if I wanted the single coil sound. That makes it turn it off to sound like a humbucker. I had this with like a Marshall kind of tone if I had this side, and this side was more like an ODR1 Nobles kind of distortion-y sound. So that was good for lead breaks. I had this for my chorus or delay. I could just quickly switch it up. And then I had this for a transparent kind of boost or a different kind of overdrive. I could turn up one gig. I turned up the gain right up with these diodes. These germanium diodes as well. It's a really great distortion sound. Really, really thick, beefy, but had headroom as well. So the Klon thing's great in a small package, and then it went into this and drove the amp and went off into the signal. So that's the one simple way you could go ampless. We'll show you another thing you could do. So this way is a different way of working. Based on this, you could have your Woodrow. You could have the Woodrow here. And then I could introduce a multi-effects pedal. So this is an Amapero Mini. And this, you could have it run your amp sounds, which is great. I prefer the response of the Woodrow to the amps on the Hotone. But you could have your Hotone do all your chorus, your flange, your reverbs and delays. You could have it all controlled from there. That would be a good way to go. You could be quite ostentatious, actually. You could have something like this where you've got some more gain. So you could have, could put one of these in, put one of these in, you know, or a Crayon. You could do something like that if you wanted, and have loads of different gains that do different things into your Woodrow and then out of your Amapero. So you've got a bit of an analog digital kind of mix. But if you want to keep things analog, I would understand. I understand that. I spent 20 years doing analog. Actually, 30 years doing analog, which is hard to imagine. You could go to town with all your analog effects, something like that. Then you could put all your gains, and then you could put your effects. That's a big muff. That's not what I mean. Actually, yeah, keep the big muff. Big muffs are great. There you go. That you plug that into an amp, into a tube amp, and that would just be great. You kind of got everything you need. I've got deluxe reverb. I wouldn't even need that because that's got the trem if I need it. But you kind of got, you know, some great sounds available if you did that. You'd stick a clon on the end. Look at that. That could be used as a boost as well. You can just turn that down, turn that up, and there you go. So that's another signal path that you could follow. So another consideration to have is what leads are you going to use? So there's generally three kinds of lead that you would connect everything up with. These are made using a kit where you buy the cable, it comes with the ends, and then you snip the cable, screw these on, and you've got a lead. Now these, so far, in a years of use, I've not really had any problems with these because they've been set up on a board and they've just worked straight away. But I know that they're not as good as soldered leads. These leads are great for little pedal boards where you've got a situation like this, where you've got two pedals next to each other, because you could plug them in and sit them nice and flush next to each other. So that kind of thing means you can get them really nice and close, which is the kind of aim of the game when you've got a small board and you want to make sure that your pedals are nice and compact to each other. On the contrast, these ones that I've made up myself actually do the same kind of thing. They're really low profile. Some of them are huge. So thank you for watching so far. I'd like to just remind you it'd be great if you could subscribe. I compare them to this one. This cable sticks out twice as much as the other one, and then when you put it next to another pedal that's at the same space, you've got a lot of, it's quite tricky to deal with. I mean, I've lost probably 2 centimeters there of space, which over a couple of pedals would be quite significant. So once you've worked it out and you're happy with the sound, you're not getting the noise, you've got the right milliamp voltage per pedal. So always look at the milliamp voltage on the pedal. It usually will tell you. Do it before you stick your Velcro on. That's a good bit of advice. All of mine are covered in Velcro now, but I know what most of them are. If you have something with a screen on it, it's going to be between 500 and 1,000 milliamps it will need, because it's got a screen on it. Okay, these two are basically computers, so they need the juice. So your power supply has to be able to operate and give that to them. Other pedals don't need as much. So this one, probably needs less than 100 milliamps. So most of them will offer about 100 milliamps as they come out, as the cables come out. And the last piece of advice really is how you're going to route these cables and you're going to use your power supply. So most of these will be able to plug in all the way in and then move under the board. And I recommend when you're doing your board, be quite systematic. So every time you put a pedal in, you don't want to be moving it around too much. So make a little plan. One of my favourite apps, which is very sad, and it's probably meant me making more pedal boards, is the Pedal Train app, where you can choose your pedals. It's got most of the pedals uploaded into it, and you can choose which pedals are appropriate for your board that you want to make. So that's called the Pedal Train app. So that's something that you might want to do. And if you're building a board, just think about the cables and your power cables as you do it. So I'm going to put this compressor in now. So, okay, so it's going to need to go there. Is it worth going underneath the board, back out and in? And because it's going into a crybaby, will it go all the way in? Actually, looking at that, no, it's not. So that is going to impact on what leads I use. So after looking at that, I'm probably going to need something a bit different to get in that tight space in order to sit flush. So I've got this nice little lead here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to think about this. I want this lead to go underneath, and we'll be able to tidy it up later on. I'm not saying fix it in the mix, but I do like tidy cabling. There we go. And that now sits lovely and flush. Another tip, some pedals can be noisy. So this is a power noise blocker. Now this is like, you know, if you're using a cheaper power supply, this might be your answer. So I've got a pedal that can sometimes add a little bit of noise to the signal. So when I'm routing that one in, I'll go from my power bank underneath into this, into the in, and then the out will go into my noisy pedal. There's just something I thought I'd show you. I'll plug this in, drop it through the hole. And this is going to be nice and neat when I start using it, because this pedal, I'll plug my guitar in here, and this pedal will have a lead that goes into there. At this stage, I'm going to take the opportunity to show you how we tidy up the cables from underneath. So your pedals should be stuck down quite well. This is where you turn it upside down and just have a look. So we've got cabling here for the power. Right now I've got two cables. So first of all, I need to check the milliampage that they're going to need. So they're both 100 milliamps. The compressor could run on 18 volts, and it does sound better actually. So it's just something to think about. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run my cables neatly as possible. I can stick them up here, or I can run them along like you see in those wonderful videos. You can do that, and I can start then zip tying them specifically into position. And then with my cables, with my jack cables, I can do the same thing. I can run a route. And what I'm aiming to do with my cabling is run it parallel to the power cables, not parallel, across the cables like this, because that will give me the minimum amount of interference there between those things. So you can try that. What I found works what I found works sometimes is you can get some of these and you could wrap this around your power cable like this, just at the point where it's going across. That will take another step in stopping any interference, but it is a little bit overkill because they are shielded to a point. So you could do something like that. If you wanted, you could zip tie it down. That's just an example of how you could do it. There's obviously ways where you could go all the way down here, all the way along here, or all the way along there, like that. And then this one could go down and across. You know, there's endless ways. I could cut it right short. You know, and you just keep building to your design, and then you test it, and then you test it, and then you build it, and you test it, and you test it with computers and without computers involved. Test it in different rooms, and there you have it. Top tips would be: think about what sounds you're going to need for the show. Leave some space to change some of your pedals out if you want. So sometimes I like to use a different pedal here in this that does this kind of job. So like a Zen drive or something, I might take that off, stick the Zen drive on to make it so I still can. But if I just with a few tightenings of that, I've got quite a neat board, semi-permanent. I wouldn't actually want to. And if you make a permanent board, which you can do, you'll want to change it again. So, you know, you might have a board that's just purposely built for a tour. You might have a bigger board, has different things in. But that's the basic things that I've found with these. I'm going to show you another way to operate. Let's get something like that on there. Then you could go out stereo. You haven't got an amp emulator on this, but you could put an IR in. And an IR is an impulse response, so it makes it feel and sound like a proper speaker. And that's useful because you could do, just have a think, if you're doing that, you could put something like an amplifier pedal involved. So there are some pedals, like this one. This is the Steel String Supreme. This has the feel of a clean amp. And you put this, I don't normally put it in front of an amp, I put this just on its own as an amp. It's to replicate a Dumble. So you could put that on. And then you could have going into there, and then you could have an IR at the end of the circuit and run that. And I'm sure you'll be pretty happy with some of those results. If you are on a budget, you can do some stuff like you could get a pedal that's like an amp in the box. People say an amp in the box pedal. You could get an amp in the box pedal. This is what I would do if I was on a budget. I'd have an amp in the box pedal, and I would get an IR box. These retail around $20, 15 to 20 pounds, 20 odd dollars. This is just an IR loader, but it's ground, but it goes to XLR, so you can plug it straight into your into your computer, or if you're into that kind of thing, or into the PA. You could have something like this. So the Crayon is an absolutely amazing little overdrive. You could use that. And away you go. You've got pretty much full range. This is kind of like a tube screamer. If you turn the treble and bass off, it's a tube screamer. And then you can go, I miss the treble from a tube screamer. You can make a treble boost. Just turn the treble up. No one really wants a bass boost, but you could. You get all kinds of cool little sounds out of this. So you could use a Crayon for your drive. And if you're on a budget, if I was on a budget, I wouldn't actually bother with that. I think you need a tuner. I think you need a wah-wah. I think you need an EQ. I think you need the best. It'd be out of these two. You know, they both do a different thing, but I'd have maybe both. That's $40 used. You know, $60, $70 brand new. One of these are like $30, and then these. So you could use them as well, and that would be a great rig. What we're looking at here is a rig build using a larger board, and this will be an ampless rig. So just expanding on what we've looked at already, we're basing it around the power unit, much bigger power supply, a lot more ampage and different voltages for things. So you can see there the way we're going is we're going to have a compressor into a wah-wah pedal into an EQ. Then we're going into different drive units. So we're going to have a protein drive, a Zen drive, clone, a King of Tone. We're going to have then we're going to go into a Woodrow, which is the amp modeler made by Uafx, and then we're going to go into a Hotone Mini, Amapero Mini, and the Amapero Mini is going to use all of the lovely kind of modulation and reverb effects. So we're going to have digital modulation and reverb, analog drive and analog gain stages. And with the beauty of that is you can control the overall output. So this is kind of the process without using the app really to influence it. Honestly, I did get to the end of this process. I think I took the Duellist out and used a big Muff instead, which was really cool in the end. So there we have it. We've built our boards, we've gone through some ideas, and hopefully there's some things there that can help you. A couple of things that I've missed out at this stage is buffers, which there's plenty of videos on buffering. With the digital mix that I tend to have, I don't tend to buffer the signal chain because I have a maximum of say 6 pedals before I actually get to the amplifier within my rig setup. But those things can be important if you've got larger kind of setups. This was supposed to be for kind of more simplistic setups, and it's good to get you going. So if you've got if you've got up to 3 pedals, I'd start using a pedal board. This would be a good place to start really. So think about your board, think about the pedals you're going to use, cables, power, ampage, and then from there try things out and experiment with them. Experiment with signal paths, experiment with instruments that you're going to use. One thing I would advise as well, if you really don't know where to start with pedals, and I'm going to do a video on this coming up, but where do you actually start with looking for a pedal if you want a certain sound? So what I recommend you do is go on a website called Equipboard, where you can find famous artist rigs and setups, and you can start from there to find those pedals, see what they use, and then you could get clones of what they use or actually get the pedals. But until next time, please like and subscribe. We're on our journey there to 500 subscribers. It would be great if you could be one of our subscribers getting to that point. And see you next time. Be excellent to each other.